Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Lovell Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. Thank you for being here with me. So we're going to have a great show for you today. Of course, we have a great show every day for you. Anyway, I got to get started quickly because, again, I got a long interview. Actually, it's a long discussion more than anything else. Michael Rudnin, first one in the house. Welcome aboard, Michael. It's Egberto. I have two short videos I hope you can play. Neither have music. First one is a duet from Hawk. Second one is from Middle East. How long are they? Tell me how long are they as I continue to speak. Harry Denson, welcome aboard from Missouri City, Texas. Joanne from Los Angeles, California. We also have in the house Rosemary Rem, Susan Magnum from Substack, Meg Margaret Ryan, Robin Judd, Natalie Lago, Deborah Hamber. I missed the first 50 or so people. So if you want me to call out your city, state, please go ahead and drop it in there. I want to show you guys something real quickly. You know, a clock is, it seems like Marjorie Taylor is going to be the canary in the mine for Republicans. If this woman is switching because she's seen something in her polling, I tell you, they better watch out. Check this out and then we'll take it on the other side.
There is a new Democrat that's been elected that does deserve to be sworn in. If it's to avoid the discharge petition, why drag this out? That is going to have 218 signatures. And so I say go ahead and do it and get it over with. Prices have not come down. That is a reality. People's wages have not gone up. That's another reality. And so Americans are continuing to have a very difficult time getting by.
All of our country's problems, from polarization to ignorance on domestic and international issues to a complete misunderstanding of our economic and healthcare systems, are a direct result of a derelict nation. As you can see, folks, she is on point, but she sounds like it's a Democrat speaking there. She happens to be telling the truth. Wow. Marjorie Taylor telling the truth. All right, Radnin, let me see what we got here. I'm going to throw it on Fate just because I don't have the time to go through in details, my brother. So let's go ahead and get busy. This is for you, brother Radnin. This is for you. You know, you guys come first. Let's go ahead and get it done. All right, let's go. Let's see.
You're not sure? Okay, well, what about... Question for you. Is this guy National Guard or ICE? You're not sure? Okay, well, what about this guy? Yeah, you still don't know? All right, how about this literal armored vehicle in the streets of Chicago? Any guesses? Yeah, they are all ICE. Trump may be sending National Guard troops to cities across America, but now that ICE has enough funding to be the 4th largest military in the world, I'd say we're already under a national occupation. It's time to stand the fuck up and say no to a fascist police state. October 18th, music festivals are happening across the country. No matter if you're in a city or a small town, go right here to find a No King's Day event near you. Because if we don't show up now, we may not get another chance.
I love when young people get involved, and this young woman is absolutely right about October 18th and about getting involved now and about all these things. Radin, good pickup. Let's get the other video in there as well.
The ferocity of Israel's assault on Gaza is unprecedented in modern times. On this UN map, the red areas represent destruction, and you can see how Israeli attacks were initially largely concentrated in the north. Then they spread right across the territory as practically the entire population was displaced. By now, more than 90% of all homes have been damaged or destroyed, with some areas completely leveled. This was the city of Khan Yunis before the war, a population of around 400,000 people. 2 years later, this is what's left. In total, there's said to be 61 million tons of debris in Gaza that could take years to clear. and you wonder what kind of future anyone there will be able to build. The ferocity of Israel's assault on Gaza is unprecedented in modern times.
And that is a shame. That is a shame. That is a shame. But you know what, Radnin? Thank you for putting that into perspective. But look, there are times things get so big, you just have to chip at it. Anyway, folks, was there something else? Yeah, there's one other story that I want to get out there before I get the video going, and I've got to get the video going now. But here is the story. ICE again is on the move. ICE pins Chicago TV producer to the ground, hauls her off. Here is the video for you to see.
What's your name?
Debbie Brockman, I work for WGN. Let them know.
I got you. Yep. Debbie Browning?
Brockman,
WGN. Do you guys want to share your names too, or you're just going to cover your face? What's your name?
Does this seem like America, folks? Does this seem like America? Well, anyway, I have this long discussion that I have with one of our regulars here. I want you guys to go ahead and listen to it.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you happen to stand to this Truth Bomb riff. It is my great honor to welcome my amigo, my compatriot, one of the smartest, hardworking people in independent media I have come across. The gentleman's name is, of course, Lovell Willies. And we are recording on Thursday, October 9th at 8 a.m. And Egberto, I'm going to put it in the description below, of course, the links to all of your magical work. I mean, I see your stuff on YouTube and on Substack and, of course, all of the other ancillary social media devices that you use. But I don't think there's a harder working man in independent media. I really do want to just start with this question. How do you get it all done?
A lot of help from a lot of tools. I can say that because a one-person news operation is very difficult in these days. But the good thing about it is having tools like there are Zapier that allows me to dynamically send my transmissions to a lot of places at once. I use a lot of tools for editing, spell checking, all that good stuff. I put it all to use, and I tell you what, it helps a lot. But as you know as well as I do, we still need people. But to have people, what we believe in is we believe that we have to compensate those who are working. And until our resources grow to that position, we all have to do it on our own, just like you are doing right now, my friend. You call me a hard worker. I call you a very hard worker as well.
Well, I'm humbled, and I say this with as much sincerity as I can possibly espouse without, painting the Sistine Chapel. People like you, okay? And I mean this, it's just what you do is such an inspiration to me, because people need to understand that I'm a producer. I've been doing this for now decades. To do good quality work that we've all come accustomed to, let's say we buy a streaming service, we go to HBO, we see a fantastic documentary produced on Max or Netflix or whatever else, and we're just like, okay, maybe we paid our monthly subscription fee, but most of us have no idea how much money it takes to do the type of quality work, especially in independent media as it relates to journalism, because you have to be able to go get the documents, you have to have the attorneys, you have to have all of these elements, and not to mention the creative that makes things enjoyable to watch. And these take absolutely enormous resources. And everybody online gets things for free, and they think the whole world should frankly be for free. And what I've learned a long time ago, and I'm using this to ramp up because I'll just insert this here. If you can, I didn't mean this to be a discussion for patronage for my colleague Lovell Willies, but if you can and you can afford it, please find a way to support his work, because his work is monumentally important, even more so considering the consolidation of media. So this last week, we've seen over and over a next level, shall we say, complete merger and acquisition of all media. We already saw the lawsuits from Donald Trump against 60 Minutes and ABC and so on and so forth. We saw the capitulation of tall building law firms, but it was all a run-up and a setup to what we're seeing right now. A gentleman who's the CEO of Oracle, the richest man in the world right now, just surpassed Elon Musk, owns an outfit called Oracle, whose largest client is the CIA. And now he owns, with his son, Paramount, giant merger and acquisition, obviously approved by the Trump administration. Then, of course, they just picked up TikTok on the cheap, I should say. Mm-hmm. And then ultimately, they were able to, I think they're in negotiations and they already have purchased certain pieces of Time Warner, which then is going to, basically strangle Max. And I'll say as a producer, some of the greatest fictional work that's ever, talked about the American spirit and what we are in context to like power and corruption is Warner Brothers, even though they've been around from the beginning. And one of the greatest stories of the American experiment. But I all say this to say, and I want you to respond to this, from where you're sitting, how important, given what I just said, is independent media?
It's amazing that you brought that up. First of all, I want to give you some kudos because you've been out there with the con. And folks, everybody who needs to go see the con, or not see the con, but download the con, because it talks about the corruption that we have in our, not only the mortgage system, but our financial system. And you had to go through and make sure that in doing that product, that documentary, that people couldn't come back at you for telling the truth. But that said, this morning, I spoke about what's going on in the media. If you mentioned TikTok being taken over by Larry Ellison, but what a lot of folks don't understand is that pretty soon, the billionaires will control not only the TikTok, not only CNN, but also we have Barry Weiss now going to be, for all practical purposes, running CBS. CBS used to be our media standard. Now that's gone. We take a look at one person owning Facebook, Threads, Instagram, and WhatsApp. 4 major social media platforms. We have, of course, a billionaire who owns X, Musk, who owns X. We don't have control of what we hear anymore. In other words, what we hear now is completely controlled by billionaires, which means all the algorithms will be made to cater to those billionaires. You and I can guarantee you, we will be throttled. What that means is they won't kick us off their platforms, but they will make sure that those who have access to what we have to say is limited. And in that regards, what I've been telling our audiences is we have to get back to the old days of the muckrakers. The muckrakers where they worked in paper, where they worked in speaking to each other, where they work in flesh and blood. We are going to have to get back there. Emails. The difference between, I remember when I'm in email hell all of the times, but I try to go through what people are sending me. And sometimes it may take me some time to respond, but I try to go through it because of this that's coming down. The email is a one-to-one or one-to-many, but you control the direct link to that person. Social media doesn't operate that way. So what you see coming out in the new media, or the new media using old forms, newsletters, people that you get attached to, that you have built a trust with, that you know is going to provide you this information. And that is where our independent media realm has been going and pretty much has got to go, where we have to take more control of what we receive. And those of us who are providing this information, this news, this fact-based opinion, we are going to have to find ways to get to those people, irrespective of what the billionaires are attempting to have us do or hear.
Wow. And, interestingly, I am a muckraker, right? And
yes, you are.
My initial foray into this next level of what we're doing with my partner and I, our actual mechanism, our company is Muckraker Media. So we are building an umbrella and a network and so many other things to help amplify. But obviously, Substack is kind of the preferred platform for you now, I believe. How long will Substack hold out? I know we've seen sort of it being inundated by the flight from those who had left mainstream media. I don't know if you can compartmentalize that compounded question, but what's your feeling about the future of Substack?
Weems, a friend of mine on Substack, has been writing those articles concerning the entry of all these folks, Marlon Weems, all these folks from the mainstream media. And the reality is we welcome these folks from the mainstream media, but we want them to be a part of what this community is supposed to represent. Now, this community is supposed to represent independent thought, independent writing, independent, complete independence that people gravitate towards. But here's the caveat, or here's what's happening. A lot of these people who were fired from mainstream media, who were let go from mainstream media, while we welcome them here, what they've created many a times is a cabal among each other. In other words, they have just brought what they had, that insular group of people that control our news in the mainstream, who got kicked out because the billionaire said, you're getting a little bit too aggressive against us, so we're going to take you out. And what they've done is, instead of come here to Substack and really expand the platform and become and join forces with those who've been here, albeit with smaller audiences, to grow the independent infrastructure, they have remained very insular. I've written to a couple of them and said, this is not what this platform represents. So a direct answer to your question then is the following. We have to put our faith in absolutely no platform. It is not the platform where we are, but it's a platform that we control. And in that light, let me tell you what I have done. I am on the Substack platform. I am on the YouTube platform. I am on the TikTok platform. I'm on all these platforms, knowing that at any time it can be purchased by some billionaire and that they can have control. But you know what other platform I'm on? My own. Little traffic, but it'll always be there. And you know what other platform I have? Emails. I make sure that I keep a relationship with which whatever I can get from the thousands of people that have given me the honor to be in their eyes and their ears, I have contact with them via email. So if these platforms go away, I still have a platform of my own. If these platforms take over, I still have a platform of my own. And that is what, with all the conversations I have with people like yourself and others, I tell, this is what we have to build. You indirectly have already built that, because you have the site for the con that already has traction. You have the site for I forget the name of that.
The Clean New Deal.
The Clean New Deal.
Right behind me. Yep.
The Clean New Deal. It's right behind you, and I'm not seeing it. The Clean New Deal. You know, in effect, what we have to do is we use these platforms because they have penetrating power. Substack has great penetrating power to reach people. But if Substack goes away, it does not mean that Egberto and Patrick goes away, because there's still the Clean New Deal, because there's still the con, etc. And if we, as independent news media people, remember to work with each other. Yeah, we can work with each other on the platform Substack, and we can do our reporting on Substack. But if that goes away, to remember that Patrick and Egberto will always be a team. And I will post what Patrick is talking about to my newsletter, and Patrick will speak what I'm talking about to his newsletter, and Marlon Weems will do the same thing. And we have to start thinking about, and I don't have all of this together yet, but I am trying to build what I call a family of people that work together. We are not competitors. We're collaborators. And once we can see that, it works better. Right now, there are too many of us who think we're competitors. And I am slowly trying to point out 1 + 1 in this space can equal 3 and not 2.
That's really fascinating that you brought that up, because I have a phenomenal interview with a gentleman tomorrow that is probably the premier documentarian powerhouse in my industry for decades. And he just released a new project about Orwell called 2 + 2 = 5. So I'll bring that into the context. But interestingly enough, you and I both know, given the definition of Antifa, that we'd probably be on, given all of this information that's coming out, on some sort of watch list that would obviously de-amplify me and you. But, I've gotten used to this. We were de-amplified by the biggest of the big. I'm absolutely certain that we were de-amplified by BlackRock to begin with.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the information that revealed that, yes, if you want to understand how this whole system works, please check out The Con. But this isn't a pitch or promotion of my work, because I really want to get inside your brain and noodle around all of these amazing things, amazingly horrific things that are coming down the pike. But if we add them up, I'm curious to see how you connect the dots here. So one of the first things on my radar, given what we're talking about, is yesterday, Stephen Miller was being interviewed on CNN. And all of a sudden, he just hits like this pregnant pause where you can see his eyes moving. And the interviewer from CNN is like, Stephen, are you there? And this after he made the comment about plenary authority. And it's since, I found out from the New York Times this morning, been wiped from the CNN's website. They've gone on the offensive. Apparently, Stephen Miller's like, oh yeah, no, this happened and this is what I did, and they're making fun of it. But then they're doing the quick switch the blame and all of these other things and implicate try to get people's minds off of what he said, how he got stalled, and who was speaking in his ears. The big question that I have: what's your response to how you were reading this situation?
Let me tell you what is it that he said that wasn't surprising, because we all knew that Project 2025, while not specifically mentioning the word plenary authority, is actually supports a unitary executive. And if you believe in a unitary executive, you also believe in plenary authority, but they don't quite say that. What got to me was that he wasn't ready to say that. And when he said that, there's a psychologist on TikTok that pointed out that she expressed the classic symptom of when the lies overpower the circuits in the brain. And that's why it's like, oh my God, I made a mistake. How do I make up for this mistake? In other words, that pause was his mind saying, how do I recover from that mistake that I know is going viral because it is true? But here's what I found to be the most upsetting part of this whole situation, that CNN came back with him and said we had technical difficulties. Maybe they should have said his brain had technical difficulties, but they said CNN had technical difficulties. And they didn't address any reporter, any journalist worth its salt would say, Stephen, last we heard, you spoke about Section 10, Title 10, given the president plenary authority. Would you like to expand on that? Because there's nothing in there. We have the separation of powers, independent branches. What exactly are you talking about? That's not what CNN did. CNN said we had technical problems. That shows you a corruption in the mainstream media like no other. So I expect that out of Stephen. What was pathetic was CNN's response. And here's a problem, brother. Here's a problem. You and I understand what happened there. Unless you and I explain how dangerous what happened is, most Americans don't see it, because first of all, they don't know the definition of plenary, they don't know the definition. But secondly, they don't understand what CNN did there by giving it a pass. And I can't hear you.
I just said right because it's the Truman Show. Look, it's so obvious. And what I can't get over is literally at this stage of the game, and this is kind of my philosophy on it, is that we all know that people, the way I frame it, is that people have to live in the four corners of their reality, right? They come from a family, they have a specific education, they've got a job, they've got responsibilities, they've got this, that, or the other that consume X amount of time that is required to do what they do. Now, if you're a brain surgeon, you got no time to do anything else. In fact, I was just at the doctor yesterday. You can see I have a mark on my nose. I had to get something removed from the dermatologist. And I have this incredibly bright dermatologist she's brilliant. She's absolutely brilliant. And she had in her waiting room, like probably 30 people, right? And she's got this huge staff and she's running around and she's the fastest person I've ever seen in my life. And one thing led to another because she knows what I do and all of these things. And she started asking me questions and I started bringing up some certain things that triggered her because her mind is in the private equity space now. Right. So, for example, everybody out there is going to be like most of our audiences are like, corruption's the problem. Okay. But yet they don't understand, for example, what private equity does and how it works, what private asset management is. They don't understand what hedge funds do. They don't understand what the too big to fail apparatuses are. They don't understand monetary policy. They don't understand the Federal Reserve. So they're going to say they understand corruption. But unless you understand all of those things, you don't really understand corruption. So it's our job to try to be able to, in terms that people can relate and understand, go, okay, we're going to pay attention to these guys that are telling me information that makes me understand that they're pissing on my head, telling me it's rain. To your point, my God, CNN did such a dramatically piss poor reaction in the cover up, but this in context of what we're seeing in the media consolidation. I can almost see that's why I was asking you, and I want to get your response to this before we move on. Who do you think was talking to him in his earphone?
I can actually say I don't know, but let me tell you, as far as what I think it's just his handler. I think remember, these guys are Donald Trump, Stephen Miller, all these guys they don't have a lot upstairs, but what they have is a lot of money behind them who are puppeteering them. We don't know who those puppeteers are. We know that there's Thiel out there. We also know that there is Musk and all these other guys. Because remember, these guys, I am trying to get our audience to get the mystique off of the billionaire knowing anything. What the billionaire knows is to live within a fraudulent economic system. That's what they know, to live within a fraudulent economic system. But engineers and producers and lawyers and garbage men and street sweepers, all these guys have a craft of value, the craft of the billionaire, and the craft of most of them is how to use other people's intellect, other people's production, other people's wealth in such a manner that they don't have to work for it. They just find mechanisms to take it. And for that, we have ceded them respect. And what I'm trying to do is bust that false bubble. And I have to break across the point where people think what both of us do is wealth envy. It isn't. It is actually, we want people to earn their worth. And that's it. Look. You have produced a lot from the time that you worked in the Hollywood industry, from the time that you did your research on the Khan. I still love the Khan. I mean, that is just a hell of a production that you worked on to inform people. But that is something of value that people could pick up, right? My former years was as an engineer. I built products that Boeing, NASA, all these people use. We produced something. Now we are sharing information. We're using our resources to share. These guys do nothing. That's why Musk could run around the White House with Millie from Argentina with a chainsaw. That's why they have the time to do those things, because other people are working. And then that's why he was so bad at Doge. He doesn't have a clue. So you put him in charge of something and it's like, oh, you mean if I get rid of USAID because it makes those MAGA people feel good, but not knowing that USAID, a lot of the soybeans and corn that the farmers who support Trump depend on, oh, wait a minute, they are going to be harmed. And then Trump decide, oh, I'm going to put tariffs on selective things that screw the farmers. There are only two answers to that. One is they're very, very dumb in what they did. Or two, ultimately, they wanted to screw the farmers so that agribusiness could buy up their land. And either one of them is terrible.
I think I am so blown away by that, because that's one of the attributes that I think you carry so gloriously. You are an engineer. You're a self-made guy. You're a powerhouse. And I'm all about the meritocracy, man. What we're talking about is an aristocracy that extracts wealth, just like the plantation owners of our former years, not to mention 1,000 years of history throughout Europe. That's the reason why the United States was born, to break the grip of tyranny. And here you are, you obviously came to the United States, which is absolutely brilliant in context of all of these horrible things that are going on, obviously as an immigrant, to bring your skills to the United States to make us a better country. And here you are. And yet there are people, and this is the whole purpose of the Trump administration, and why He's a transactional Rico pig, as far as I'm concerned. But the nature of his stupidity, which is on display every single day, the first thing that can save us is their incompetence, first and foremost. But the people that fill in the blanks, the technocrats, the Russell Votes of the world, those that work for the Coke industries, these super high-paid, highly skilled people who understand the system inside and out. Like, honestly, I expected a lot, and I read a lot from Project 2025 prior to the election. So I was on guard. And especially when I saw, as the results came in, that they got both houses of Congress, I already knew that they had SCOTUS. And I knew we were in a world of hurt. And that's what I was espousing throughout my social media. And here we are this many months later, 9 months later, I'll remind people that as we've got so much coming down the pike, right? With this, with the troops and the National Guard from your state in Texas, and we'll talk about that momentarily, up to Chicago and how Pritzker is responding to it, and we'll get to that in a moment. But I have to paint this picture first. Given all of this monstrosity of things that are going on, Donald Trump has literally pocketed north of $7 billion.
Imagine that.
$7 billion. My friends, the president of the United States, which is the most powerful position on the planet, has a salary of $460,000. His retirement is taken care of, not to mention, of course, all of the ancillary things that come if you're Barack Obama, for example, and Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton. We could get into a whole menagerie of twists and turns in that tale. But the nature of the presidency is humongous, but it's not a $7 billion salary. This is beyond the worst corruption in the history of the United States. But this is what's insane too, by the way. That's just for the presidency is what I meant by that analogy. But in context of what I reveal here, I've got the pathway to how we provided tens of trillions of dollars illegally to the financial system that constitutes this billionaire apparatus that has a chokehold that's using, Donald Trump as the stupid whisperer. And then he's going to be out soon and whatever comes next. But all of that being equal, I wanted to kind of hit the rewind on this part to launch the next part of our conversation. So we already established who's talking in the ear of Stephen Miller. Okay, a week ago and 2 weeks ago, he had pronounced, you don't know what's coming. Nobody knows what's coming. They've made Antifa a terrorist organization. Obviously, as we've seen throughout social media, if you can't quite grasp the notion of Antifa, General Dwight D. Eisenhower and the entirety of the North American Command were Antifa. But Antifa is not even an organization. But what they're doing, because we now have Sebastian Gorka, for example, as the secretary of what is it, terrorism czar, basically. Yeah. And I know who Sebastian Gorka is. But within all of these contexts, like if you go back to like 1998, for example, in the World Trade Organization, protests that were happening in Seattle. And then, of course, many things that have happened over the course of the last 30 years, particularly when you look at some of the stuff that happened in Gaza obviously, October 7th. I mean, one of the tools in the modus operandi of specific groups was throwing rocks, burning buildings, doing those types of things. And there are extremists that have been doing that forever. There's no question about it. But to associate that with what we're revealing is a mighty far stretch. But that's what authoritarian, administrations have done throughout history. And whether we want to compare, honestly, I think there's always a lot of misappropriation to Trump's fascism. I never compare Trump to Hitler, even though I will compare, Stephen Miller to Joseph Goebbels, and of course the platform of X to Goebbels-like propaganda. But all of that being equal, Trump is just a transactional golfer. He's going to get his and he's going to take off. He's not committed to the cause. But these other guys are. Right. We could compare him to Mussolini, and I could go on, and we could, talk about authoritarianism from, of course, Mao and Putin and all of the rest. Authoritarianism is authoritarianism, especially when the clampdown comes and everybody else is the enemy of the state. Right. But all of that being equal, we're literally seeing in real time troops being deployed from the National Guard, guys that work part-time in the state of Texas, that are going to go work for a five-time deferred bone spur, guy who got out of service, 6-time bankrupt, $7 billion looting job, criminal, 34 convicted felon, and so forth. And they're going to go to Chicago To do what exactly? My question, I guess, baked into all of that is your thoughts on what's happening across the country. But B, when is it going to happen? And I'm sure you've thought about this yourself, because there's a lot of people in the National Guard like you, Ecto, honest, genuine, hardworking Americans who believe in liberty and justice and integrity and the way things should work properly. How long is it going to be before they don't follow orders?
As far as the Guard is controlled, I think sooner than later. Now, remember, Trump is the people that back Trump, they're pretty smart. That's why they created ICE the way they're created. Note it was one of the highest funded police forces in the last budget. And what they want to do is have a whole lot of ICE running around the country because of exactly what you just said there. How long before they stop following orders? You see, ICE won't, because ICE is comprised of the thugs in America. If you take a look at the people that comprise ICE, you can see who they are. They were interviewing the people getting these $50,000 bonuses, and all of them were full-fledged MAGA. And they want to go crack some heads and beat up some immigrants. Well, they say immigrants, but we know what they really mean. That's what they want to do. So that's the force I think he's going to use. He has some restrictions, about 100 miles or so with the border force, but with the ICE proper itself, I think they have free reign around the country. Now, that said, my concern really is when the generals, whenever the generals think that the executive has overstepped and somehow someone of them does something. Look, I am from Central America. We are used to seeing the different branches of government do things. I think it actually, if Donald Trump does what we think he wants to do around the election time, populating cities with I don't think it's going to be National Guard necessarily, but populating cities with ICE all around, claiming that I'm protecting the booth from illegal voting. I think that is a premise. I think that's what he's going to do. Declare martial law. I think that's what he's going to do. And I think it's up to us. The population, to show the military that this is an illegitimate government. And that will give those generals, along with the sensible portion of Congress, it'll be ex-constitutional now, because remember, the Constitution is a very flawed document. It assumes sensible men that are following the letter of the Constitution with checks and balances, etc. What the Constitution does not prepare us for is where checks and balances break down, because the Supreme Court is not but an appendage of the executive, and the Congress is not but an appendage of the executive. The Constitution has no solution for that, none whatsoever. Because if the judiciary says that is unconstitutional, even if it's a constitutional thing like a woman's right to her body, that's what goes. So I mean, we are in for some heady times, my brother. But I think those of us that understand what's going on, we have to do our part. And I think we have to keep people informed, and not only informed, because remember, the other side is informing them as well, just with disinformation. We have to earn, those, you and I and others doing this independent media thing, we have to earn the respect of the people so that their trust is with us. And how do we do that? I mean, I tell you, every so often I make a mistake. And when that occurs, I make sure to come right out and point it out. We have to create a level of trust, because the other side is investing such a big amount in the disinformation domain.
You know, my response to that is, when you have the truth, you're bulletproof. When you live in light, you live in truth. When you lie, you're depraved. When you have the truth, there's nothing that can stop you. When you lie inside, you die. I mean,
yes,
we've got to convince the American people to stop lying and stop buying lies. Now, that's a battle in the trenches. I do it every day. And there are times I feel bad because I think about the psychology of these things. And I'm like, sometimes I respond to comments that I don't need to respond to. They don't see the big picture. They want to attack the messenger. They want to say, you have a God complex. You're delivering Patrick Lovell the clean new deals. Who made you the savior? I'm like, I'm not the savior. The truth is our savior. I'm just the deliverer, because it happened to be my job to go on a decades-long march with millions of dollars of resources, where I was able to do the work that the full, literally Department of Justice, the FBI, the SEC, the United States couldn't do. Go ahead.
But I want to say something, because you said some people would ask you, who made you the savior? We want everybody to be made saviors.
True.
You and I.
Absolutely.
You and I stepped out to do it, and others. Marlon Weems stepped out to do it. and many other Instagrammers and TikTokers and Substackers. They've stood out to do. There are thousands of us that are doing this in this very huge 330 or so million people. So there are a lot of, I don't want to call us saviors, but we are doing what's the patriotic thing to do.
Absolutely.
That's what we're doing.
Right. But we're professionals. Okay. The thing, and honestly, because of what we're seeing at CBS, and remind me of the woman's name who's become the editor-in-chief, who's 41. He's like
Barry Weiss.
Very wise. Not to mention, let's look at, for example, Caroline Levitt is the press secretary. She was an intern before she got that position. You look at the incompetence of, Hegseth as the Department of Defense, or Department of War. Sorry, Chairman of the Department of War, which is ridiculous. And you saw it on the faces of all the brass looking at this clown, telling them that they've got to get in shape. They're thinking to myself, by the way, I do just a quick side comment on that. When I saw that picture, the first thing that popped in my mind is like, am I watching a South Park episode? I mean, the whole thing was just so ridiculous. But someone had commented that I thought it was very interesting, that getting all of those guys in the same room enabled them to communicate in a way that they wouldn't be able to communicate because of SATCOM and guys that were listening devices and, the nature of, whatever Palantir's involved with and Doge and yada, yada, yada. They maybe have shot themselves in the foot, honestly. And by they, I'm talking about the Stephen Millers and the Russell Votes, whoever thought that was a good idea. I think it's going to backfire personally. But that being equal, moving forward in the sort of panoply of what we've got to get people to understand is that, and I'm sure there's more people out there like me than I know, right? I know that we got quashed by the system. And again, we spent years, tens of thousands of hours. We had to cross our T's and dot our I's, to your point, because if we didn't, we would have been sued into oblivion because we were taking on the most powerful financial interest in the entire world. They would have snuffed us out. But what we've ended up doing is we've ended up making the truth for free. And this is the irony, because all the American people buy our lies. That's because they're kind of forced in that situation. Again, you live in the four corners of your universe. You get your algorithm fed to you. You don't know where the truth is coming from. You look at somebody who's got high production value, makeup, good looks, they sound good, they sound like they're educated. You don't realize they're reading from a teleprompter that's been, beguiled with, propaganda. So people have got to do their own work, because what you said at the beginning of this whole, this last piece was that the founders were flawed in many ways, but in designing the Constitution, they couldn't foresee the scenario because they put the onus on the American people to be the citizens, because they knew that for informed people who think in their best interest is to not allow tyrants to roam, free to destroy their lives. That's what they fought a revolution against, right? So we, the people, have to understand, and you do have to gravitate and do a little bit of your own homework and see who understands. But Egberto is delivering monumental information every single day that the mainstream media can't, or just refuses to because of
refuses. They have the money to do it. They just refuse.
And that goes to your point about the folks that have gravitated, that got fired. Let's call it Joy Reid and whomever else. They got fired from MSNBC because they didn't fit the protocol of what the Trump administration wanted. The same type of thing of firing African-American generals and so on and so forth. Okay, she's African-American. We don't want her on the air. It's like, what? You got to be absolutely kidding me. And the pushback was, they literally have all capitulated, right? And so instead of Joanne Reed bringing the sort of information that we have, in fact, I saw her on Crystal Ball and Kyle Kalinske 2 weeks ago, and all three of them were asking questions like, somebody ought to do a deep dive on all of the sort of corollaries and the intro sort of feeders that control finance, capital, and power. And I'm like, first of all, Kyle and Crystal, I was on your show 3 times, and I explained exactly what that is. In our work, the con.tv provides the details of that infinitum. But they're calling for what we've done and been doing for now years.
Let me interrupt you for this reason, because this is where the respect thing comes in, right? You have done the work. I have seen the work that you've done and the professionals and the experts that you've brought in, etc. The work is done, but they are so used to being fed by the producers and the others in their domain. And that's all they know that have existed, what's been fed to them. And they have not gone out of the box to understand that these people that their producers thought were quacks, lefties, or whatever, or the information that was being hidden from them, and the information that they want now is already there. I can tell them, I've interviewed Richard Wolff many a times. I've interviewed so many other economists that are pros at this stuff that can explain to them exactly why we are in the economic state that we're in. I've explained, there's this, the guy who wrote that book about, he was the capitalist attacker or something like that around the world. Gosh, I can't remember his name right now. That explained what our form of capitalism have done. I mean, all these things have been done. You've done the complete research into the $6 to $7 trillion or so money that was stolen. How much?
71 trillion, my brother.
So we're up now to $71 trillion. That research
that was by 2019. Yeah.
Right. That research is done. And here's the deal. They are on this platform now. Imagine if they saw in their feed Clean New Deal, and they saw one of the great interviews that you give to some of these experts and say, maybe I will use the notoriety that I have. Because let's be clear, when they came over to Substack, they all came over with an audience that was ready to feed them because they're well liked. But if you are not in it for yourself or the money only, but you're in it for, look, we get peanuts on the dollar in subscriptions. They get tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. But we continue to work. And I hate to put it this way. I'm going to put it on you. You work so much harder in doing your own research because you don't have your own producer. You don't have your own writer. You don't have your own, everything that you do is collaborate. So you work hard for a small amount of subscriptions. You would think that this person would say, gosh, we can leverage this. 1 + 1 doesn't have to equal 2. Wait a minute. I have a big notoriety. I want to make a difference. And there is Patrick Lovell. I can use Patrick and we can actually put this show together that informs Americans. And I'm not going to use the cookie cutter standard that my producers in mainstream media was giving me that still has me asking the question today that you heard them ask Joy Reid on the show. Maybe we need to see where the money is going. Ask me. I know where it is.
Well, beyond that, though, and see, this is a great point, but they took their culture. So they never asked the right questions the whole time, right? That's why we had to do the work we did. I got to tell you, I was going through a scenario after the 2008 great financial crisis that lasted about 4 years before I was able to get on this journey where it was like, and trust me, I suffered through more.
You lived it.
Yeah. It was just horrendous. It was like being in the aftermath of a giant earthquake, a calamity, natural disaster. I mean, it was the avalanche of, the tidal wave of carnage, right? And, trying to survive all of that stuff, you start to ask all of the questions. And one thing I kept noticing from the folks in their velvet holes, they didn't ask questions. They only had the go-to guys that were paid basically propagandists. This is what we've been doing now for literally 14 years. In fact, Rachel Maddow, as good as she is, still hasn't asked the right questions, which is absolutely amazing. And I could go on and on and on about that. But here they are migrating and bringing that brand of, quite frankly, ignorance. Now they're intelligent. They probably have degrees in journalism. Maybe they're
very intelligent.
But they're still. This should actually appeal to everybody who sometimes feels like maybe things are certain things might be above their sort of comprehension. No, even the smartest people in our country are quite frankly stupid for money.
I want to give an example. I interrupt you for this example. I learned a lot from you when you went from the con when you explained certain things. Right? I knew. Look, I'm an engineer. I know a lot of stuff, but I saw, wow. And my audience as well. In fact, a couple of them like, when are you going to bring him on again? Like, hey, very soon. But let me explain what I mean by that, though. Good journalism isn't about you knowing everything. Good journalism is about you being able to bring out the experts and not only bring them out, but ask the right question. And notice how I end most of my interviews because of my ignorance. I would say, what should I have asked you that I didn't? And the reason behind all of that is to, first of all, to give the respect that they have earned, these experts have earned. But secondly, to acknowledge that they are the expert. So why should I know all the questions to ask the expert? They have the platform now. Let us know.
Well, exactly. And to that point, so as an investigator on this specific journey, people need to understand that people like myself, but particularly in this connotation, which is huge in terms of how power and money intersect, okay, with politics, quite frankly, because it's all about money. And once you go down, the journey to understand, you're like, oh my God, now it all makes sense. The lights can turn on. But it's really, I became the black box of the crashing American dream, right? I mean, that's really what it was. We all know that when a plane goes down, that you have investigators from TSA go out and they have to find the black box. And why do they want to find the black box? They want to understand the cause and effect so that they can fix the problem. That's how you do it.
Again. Yeah.
So this particular work is the blueprint for what's created the fascism of now. Because I always say corruption burns and fuels fascism. But I want to finish this because we've only got a few more minutes, and I can tell you've got 15 other things going on. Look, take us home based on the focus of the day for you. And short term, as we approach the No Kings, and I will say this as a jumping off point, I'm going to be engaged with the No Kings rally in my city, and then also everybody from the New Untouchables. We're going to roll out, just for your information, something epic that we're going to be able to do that Congress can't do, and hopefully it'll have the backing of the entire Indivisible Alliance and No Kings Alliance, and hopefully we'll be all over the place. So that I want to put that on your radar. But as we approach, based on, because I know you're very active and so forth in your community, and martial law, what's your feeling about how things are evolving, and what do you want to express both in terms of insights and also in caution?
First of all, I want us to have October 18th as the largest rally in local spots ever. In other words, I would hope not to have just the big, huge rallies in downtown Chicago, downtown Houston, or anything like that. I want subdivisions to have their own rallies. And that's what we are having here in my locale. We are probably going to put together between 300 to 700 people in my little section here in Houston. In the little section of Conroe, you're going to have 500, 600. I mean, what we want to do is have this stuff so widespread. In other words, it's like a metastasized positive cancer. That authoritarianism doesn't work because the military is not large enough to be everywhere. And if our protest is everywhere, it'll be shown that we have overwhelmed the system, would have gotten to that 3.5% where change happens. So that's the first thing. Please, if you are listening to this right now, find yourself one of these No Kings rally. And if you don't find one, create one. Create one. If it's 3 of you standing up at a store, have a No Kings. Let me tell you, when we did Occupy Kingwood, there were some days it was raining and storming, and I would go out there with the banner and ask my wife to film me with a banner with the rain coming down. Sometimes, stupid me, the lightning sometimes. And there were times that I stayed out there in the rain, and eventually people will start coming because they see you make that stance. I'm asking everybody that's listening to us, everybody should be out there peacefully. If they cuss at you, ignore peacefully. I love you peacefully. If sometimes you see the National Guard as they're coming to you, I love you, guy. You are one of us. Don't let the system fool you, brother, sister. You are one of us. Peacefully, it can be done. So where I want us to be on November 18th is to have the largest performance by Americans ever in history. Now, where does that go from there? I think that will be a message that cannot be unheard or unseen.
I got to tell you, you bring a smile to my face every time. When I look at you, I listen to the words you say. I look at your deeds. I look at this composite, incredible analysis, the skill, the brilliance in your production and your editing and all that you do. I don't ever in a million years, I'd never do it anyway, but I say this in the context of the spirit of Martin Luther King. I have a dream not to be judged by the color of my skin, but the content of my character. And here is somebody like Lovell Willies, who exemplifies every single day. He's an immigrant. He's come here. He's got so many things that he's had to work through to become this dynamic superhero, as far as I'm concerned. And he continues to make our country better by being the best American he can. And that, to me, is causation for us all to be inspired. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart to be my friend and a man who sticks, his integrity, his decency, his dignity out for the world to see every single day, to try to find solutions to these incredibly stupid, horrific problems that are easily rectified if only millions of us, quite frankly, live true to what we put on paper. That's where we are this 248th year into this experiment that Jefferson said, it's a great system if you can keep it. And the only way we're going to keep it is if guys like Egberto and I inspire millions of you to wrap your head around the truths in order to form a more perfect union than buy the lie and allow this insanity to continue to completely make a fool out of our country. But more importantly, it's nakedly corrupt. If you can't keep right in your mind's eye, given all of the superfluous insanity that's happening, that Donald Trump has walked with 7 billion plus, as far as 5 to 7 billion, right? I think he got paid 90 million collectively from all of the media enterprises just the last couple of days, right? This is a system of grift, guys, where in the last several years, we've seen South Korea make their corrupt oligarch do the walk on the plank. And we just saw Brazil basically espouse and show the integrity of law better than the United States of America. You've got to be kidding me. So I'll put down here in the description, please find it. Let's plug all of the different platforms that you're on, Egberto.
Yeah, you can find me on Substack by going to politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. politicsdoneright.com/newsletter on Substack. You can see all my programs at politicsdoneright.com as well, and it'll link you to everywhere. So again, the Substack is now my central location. But again, like I have mentioned, all of us are going to be collaborating. So if you find Patrick, you can find me. If you find me, you can find Patrick, and with others as well. So I want to thank you, first of all, Patrick, for giving me this opportunity to speak to you and understand as well that the feeling is mutual.
Thank you. And thank you. And if you're down in Kingwood, Texas, my friends, please gravitate to Egberto and, everybody join arms and let's do this peacefully. Exactly. That's the only way we can do this. And we know that there are men and women in our armed services that do understand that they gave an oath to the Constitution. Not, what do we call them? The Orange Julius, what are some of the...
I don't remember. I know what you mean, though. Yeah.
Right. Anyway, but listen, all the respect and appreciation and love to you, my brother, and we'll be in touch soon. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you, brother. Have a peaceful day.
Hey, guys, I hope you like that. Now, I want to give a big call out to all the heroes in Conroe, Texas. In Conroe, Texas, they attempted to pass a city ordinance that was going to for these protests to go on, meaning the No Kings. They were going to have to put a deposit of at least $500 and take out $1 million policy, $1 million insurance policy. People were going crazy. I called up a few activists called up and I said, don't fall for it. The truth of the matter is just make sure whoever organized it is nowhere to be found. No one knows who that is. And each one of you, I don't care if it's 1,000 of you, can walk in the streets with a sign, can walk in public areas with a sign. It's your free speech. Well, I got a call yesterday where one of our great activists out there in Conroe said, Egberto, I'm on my way to the meeting right now. I'm like, man, I hope you're going to go out there and say something. He said, I don't think I'm going to have to. A lot of people are out there speaking. Well, a lot of people were out there speaking, and guess what? They tabled it. And not only did they table it, but what also happened is whichever right-wing person attempted to get that ordinance in, try to blame the police chief about it. And the police chief came out and said, no, I had nothing to do with it. And everybody's walking away from the attempt to stifle democracy. So I want all of you out there to send the message to Conroe, Texas activists and let them know Yes, we are in this together. And when we work together, when we hold hands together, when we love on each other, guess what? We win. So let's keep going. And remember, No Kings, October 18th. If you can't find one, create one. If you don't want to drive downtown, which I hope you don't, make it local. Have as many people as you can local, so that they can't. You see how we have a clown on here saying, oh, Soros has nothing to do with this. This is all grassroots. I can attest to it. This is all entirely grassroots. Let's show America who we really are. Hey guys, please remember to support us. Best way to support us is via politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. You can become a paid subscriber. That really helps us keep getting the message out. politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. And remember, you are the ones who make things happen. You are the ones who make things happen. Just like they did in Conroe, just like we'll do all over. I got to get out of here. My name is Egberto Willies. Love you all. This is Politics Done Right. And you know how I end this, baby. I am what? Out! Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.